Hi, this is Vlad Stimac from Anadolu Efes. You're listening to Sweet 16, best podcast out there.
Baskonia came back from the dead. Shved and Fenerbahce delivered a classic up until the very end, and Real Madrid retaliate after a rough start to the week. All that and what's ahead in the next round of EuroLeague. It's all ahead of us now on Sweet 16. Tune in.
Hello and welcome to the 7th episode of Sweet 16, an open look on EuroLeague basketball, Season 2. Just before we go, guys, amazing double rounder in the EuroLeague. Before we kick off with that, first, hi Emmett, hi Aris. Guys, what was that? Emmett, you said winter is coming.
Yeah, and things got pretty silly last week. I think it's to say we're going to get into how silly it got in terms of, there's an argument we're going to be making. Is anyone safe anymore? I think we're pretty safe in saying no one is at this stage when it comes to, most game situations. But yeah, things going good here in Ball in Europe Towers here in Dublin. Weather has been steady, which means not great in Dublin, but not raining, so we're happy enough.
And finally, it's also cold in Athens. Winter also got us. And what's really interesting is that you shouldn't expect that, but both the Greek teams are thriving despite the bad weather.
And we've got a huge show ahead for y'all. We're going to go through not so much game by game last week because that would take forever and also be boring. So we're just going through sort of the main stories that came out of last week performance-wise. Although we will look at one game in particular because, again, I really, really enjoyed it. And so did the rest of us. Then we'll get to the Scouts Notebook. Of course, one guy is gone from Milano. Nick Calathis coming so close to the ultimate rarity in EuroLeague. And then onto our coaches playbook, looking at sort of, the performance of some of the coaches, how they're getting on right now. And then before, of course, we'll finish off by looking at the games ahead this week. But as always, we start off with the continually inaccurately named 4-minute warning. 4 minutes to get through all the action that just happened in EuroLeague. It's the 4-minute warning. And yeah, I suppose the story really that if you can go under the radar, I suppose in a 2-round week you can, is Baskonia alive again after what would best be described as a horrific start to the season. It's almost like, Pablo Prigioni falling on his sword is the most noble thing that will happen in basketball this season. Moshe, just a really good week for Baskonia. Obviously they did bad things to Real Madrid and then went to Kaunas and did bad things to Zalgiris.
Yeah, it looks like as if they are like the phoenix. They came up from the ashes. Right now they are blazing. They are swinging. The question is, I'm assuming they'll get another win or two, hands down. When I'm saying a win or two, hands down, I mean like in the upcoming weeks. The question is, with a roster that is not as deep as it should have been, what's the price to pay down the road, like the effect it's going to have. But right now, either way, their comeback is nothing less of remarkable. Aris, my question to you is, my friend, do you believe that, first, this is something that's temporary? Do you think that they need to make additional roster moves to, simply to have more depth to start with?
The answer is yes, they should get better if they want to aim higher, but no, this is not a temporary change. We don't exactly know what happened in Baskonia, why Coach Prigioni took such a hard decision, but everything worked out for the better. And we don't have to look only at the result. Look at the kind of basketball that Baskonia is finally producing. Nothing spectacular changed in the personnel of the team. They are pretty much the same players. Ray McCallum is still out with injury, and suddenly something clicked. We don't know what really happened. That's the point. We really don't know what really happened. What we know for sure is that the addition of Matt Janning proved to be a blessing in disguise, and also that the fact that Marcelinho Huertas is no longer the starting point guard is also an issue that has to be addressed. So far, the return of Marcelinho to EuroLeague is not creating the waves that one may expected And even if Baskonia throughout the summer believed that they will ultimately land Jason Granger, it's strange how things work, because I believe that the initial plan was that Jordan McRae and also Marcelinho Huertas will be the starting backcourt, and they are doing fine without them having an extended role so far.
There's also the injury issues that they have with McRae getting hurt time after time with his shoulder.
Yes, obviously, but the fact is that without Marcelinho and without McRae, I'm not blaming the players here. I'm just stating the facts that in theory the two starting guards of the team are out for various reasons, or at least are not performing at the level that everyone expected them to. That's the case of Marcelinho, and Baskonia is playing better. If you think about it, it's kind of unthinkable and also amazing.
And a team which came out of the gates like lightning last week, only to see it sort of go down in late dramatic style. Efes, huge win to start the week at Maccabi, and then narrowest to margins, but still ended the week giving up their home court. Admittedly, as tight as it gets, but a week where they really could have done with going 2-0. They split it 1-1, going down to Panathinaikos. Like Aris, as well as Efes, are they still trying to find some stability, or should they look at this week as still being it was a positive week for them?
There is no clear answer. It's kind of if you are an optimist or a pessimist. The fact is that Anadolu Efes so far is underachieving, and that was evident in the game against Panathinaikos and also the game against Maccabi. The record that they have at this point is not representative of what they can do. Of all the teams that have at this point just 3 wins, I will say that Anadolu Efes and Barcelona are underachieving. They are expected to add a player in Dragic, who left Milan and has a deal with them. But so far, what can be said about Anadolu Efes is that especially Ricky Ledo, who was expected to be a force in the EuroLeague, is not performing in the level that everyone was expected from him. Josh Adams is a very different case. He needed some time in order to prove himself in the highest level, and maybe that's why Dragic is added to the roster. But still, if you look at the names and the quality of the roster, it's very hard to understand why Anadolu Efes has only 2 wins.
We're looking at Anadolu, we're thinking, obviously, as Ari said, they were underachieving. Now, to be honest, I was not that high on saying they were underachieving, because I thought at the beginning that they had a lot of issues, which meant that they're, let's say that they were not as good as I thought that they actually are. But the game versus Maccabi proved me wrong, which I'm happy, obviously, to be wrong about it. But it's as Ari said, something is not clicking over there. It's unclear whether it was because of Lido, whether it's because of Josh Adams that, still trying to get back with one of the most amazing comebacks from an injury that, it is amazing to see him play basketball right now. I really don't know. It's like they have two different teams. It's like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. You have the team that can dominate you, which they have a lot of strength at their front court. And then sometimes, if the backcourt clicks, if shots are going in, then they can be unstoppable. But something there is just not consistent. Maybe, perhaps, they had both Granger and Thomas Hertel last year. And with Hertel, it was much more of a floor general than what they have right now. Perhaps that might be some sort of a contributing factor.
Now, remarkably similar week for both Greek sides this week. Both of them had one toughed out road win. Pau obviously that 82-81 over 08 FS. Oli at Fenerbahce in overtime 98-83, and both of them quite dominant at home. Oli taking down Zvezda and Pau taking down Khimki in both extremely comfortable fashion. I'll start with you, Moshe, on this one. We're seeing sort of, the two of them sort of, very businesslike so far. 6-2 and 5-3 their records. Obviously, Pau had probably the rougher start, I think it's safe to say, but both of them looking pretty businesslike in this as we hit sort of come towards the end of the first third of the season, I suppose.
I mean, look at Olympiacos. You know, they had this. The one thing that I love to see is that they came from a losing streak, right? Look at the recovery. Now they've beat Fener, you know, on the road in a game where they were up ahead. Fener managed to force overtime, and you know what? Mentally bouncing back from losing such an advantage on the road could prove to be just too hard, but not for them. Zvezda was an expected win, you know, with all the respect to the Zvezda fans, please love us when we land in Belgrade somewhere around May. But Olympiacos are now, like I said 2 episodes ago, I think it was, I do believe they are a Final Four contender team right now, early on that in the season. Now, here's another bomb I'm about to drop. A team that would manage, that would somehow, by a miracle or something, or a fifth horseman or whatever, manage to get a win at the OAKA. That win should prove to be very significant or perhaps worth a playoff spot. I think also a great difference between Panathinaikos of this year and the one of last year is that aside of them being an amazing home team, they are getting also away wins, which is impressive.
Well, Aris, just on that, like, I suppose both of them sort of looking like their usual selves. Obviously, we know Pau still has some personalities they need to work on, but you got to be happy if you're a fan of either Greek side after last week.
No question about it. Olympiacos had some bad games, had 2 bad games against Panathinaikos and against Barcelona, and because the second game was a defeat by Panathinaikos, that created not exactly a crisis, but a lot of tension, let's say. Generally speaking, you can get by the EuroLeague season and in Greece if you beat your eternal rival and be confident that in the end what everyone will remember will be the Greek League finals. So losing a game, especially at home, to your rival creates always some issues. Aside from that, for 2 games Olympiacos had a very hard time scoring the ball. The same happened also in the Greek Cup game against Aris. Olympiacos was fighting to get over the 50 points line, which considering the fact that of the previous outings of Olympiacos was very mind-blowing. Many believe that finally the absence of Spanoulis caught up with the team, and also many believe that once again the problem was that no other player could create for the rest of his teammates the way that Spanoulis does. While it's obvious that Spanoulis is missing from the team, it's also obvious, I believe, at this point that the main difference of this Olympiacos team compared to the few previous seasons is that he's expecting and the team is also getting many more things than from the foreign players than than it usually happened during the last few seasons. It's not that Olympiacos had bad, not Greek players. It's a testament of the fact that players like Brian Dunston or Othello Hunter, after playing for Olympiacos, upgraded the status in the EuroLeague. The same can be said even for Daniel Hackett and of course for Matt Lojeski. The fact is that in every crucial game of Olympiacos, the players who made things happen were mainly Greeks and mainly Spanoulis and Pridezis. What will be remembered from this double games week is that for the first time in recent years, especially against Fenerbahce, with the exception of Pridezis, all the other players who contributed big to the win were non-Greeks. That's something that makes Olympiacos feel a little bit better for the chances that the team has to get to the Final Four and get all the way.
Aris, what's the timetable to Billy's return? When is Spanoulis supposed to come back? Is there a date?
That's a very interesting question because for the first time Spanoulis is listening to the doctors. In any other occasion in previous years, Spanoulis, because the problem is just a tendonitis, he will be back playing. This time he wants to protect himself so badly in order to be on the right shape when the games will really count that maybe for the first time in his career, he's really listening to the doctors and he's not expected to be back neither this week, just because first of all, it seems after all that the team can afford to rest him, and he wants to be totally rested and totally at 100% when he will return. A lot of people are asking what's going on with Spanoulis, especially those that are not residents of Greece and they are not getting the daily treatment of Spanoulis updates. But the answer is pretty simple. Spanoulis is doing what is more than usual to do when you have a star in the NBA that is not at 100%. And the good thing for Olympiacos is that even without Spanoulis, the team is playing great. Roberts is playing great. Strelnieks is playing great. Suddenly everything clicked and it seems that there is life outside Spanoulis. And talking about Panathinaikos, this was the week of vindication of Nick Kalathis. I cannot put it any other way. Kalathis is one of the most unfairly criticized players around Europe and especially by Panathinaikos fans in Greece. Yes, we know that his shot is not the best part of his game, but it's obvious that Kalathis is one of the top guards in Europe. He demonstrated this also in the recent Eurobasket, where he and Slukas emerged as the leaders of the Greek national team. But when you see Kalathis playing with confidence, you see a player that can do everything on the floor. And the truth is that if he had a better shot, he probably would never left the NBA. This is his weakness, but it's a weakness that it's manageable, and everything else that he does on the court, he does it in such a way that very few other players in Europe can do.
And I suppose, Moshe, we got to go to you on this next one because Maccabi had a tough start to the week, I think it's reasonable to say, dropping that game against Efes. Great comeback, though, going to play against Khimki, not quite Khimki, but taking that road win. I suppose that's the type of thing we wouldn't have seen last year in a double round at Maccabi. Had they dropped that home game, you'd have been expecting Maccabi to go out and then lose the road game as well, go 0-2 on the week. I suppose there's a different mentality there this season.
I'm going to surprise you guys. Last year, Maccabi were pretty much at the same spot, I think, give or take a game or two. Maccabi came to a game versus Efes when their schedule allowed them to go on a very good road. In terms of gathering a few important wins altogether. They had, I think, Anadolu and then Barcelona and another game. They ended up losing all three of them. Now this year, they came to the encounter versus Anadolu Efes 4-2. And all of a sudden, Efes beats Maccabi at home, like in Tel Aviv. And all of a sudden, everyone's speaking about, what's going on. Is it possible that a past is coming? History repeat itself in a way, if you can call a year ago history. But then you see a group of guys that have, you've seen it in you've heard the players speaking, you've seen it in their eyes. They knew that they had to deliver. They knew they had to bounce back and to step up, bottom line. And they did exactly that. I mean, let alone, set aside, Thomas Robinson's amazing performance that kept Khimki in the game. Maccabi did a number on Shved. Now, Sergei Munia was amazing. We saw him the way that we loved seeing him a few years ago. It was great. But if you got this guy delivering one of his best games yet, probably then something's off. Now, obviously, like we said, and Aris mentioned it perfectly last episode, saying that Khimki are playing without Tyler Honeycutt is still injured, and to El Salda Battery, they've lost also Anthony Gill. But Maccabi's knockout came pretty much from the backcourt. You're seeing Michael Roll that people are not talking too much about him. He comes every game. He does his job quietly with such a tremendous basketball IQ, which is simply remarkable. And as as Antonis Rogilakis from Eurohoops said, they did an article which was a summary, a roundtable of basketball experts. He called Deshaun Thomas a weapon of mass destruction. And when you see the way that Maccabi's playing, they're playing for each other. It's nice to see it. I don't think that such a team as last year would have beat Khimki with danger. That's missing Anthony Gill and obviously Honeycutt. But I'm not the guy to ask. Obviously, I really would like to hear you guys. What do you think about what's going on? And by the way, I did talk to a few guys at Maccabi. I asked them, guys, coming to this season, if I would have told you before the first tip-off of the season, 8 games into the EuroLeague, you're going to be 5-3. Would you believe that? And it's like Emmett said with Bamberg. Them going 4-4, lovely. They loved it. I think that every team that's right now located within the first 8 seeds, they would have signed right now. They would tell you, we would love to be where we're at right now at this specific moment.
Well, one thing that really stood out for me in that Maccabi performance was the discipline against Shved, because I know I brought it up so often this season, but it's with good reason. No one has been able to draw fouls the way Shved has this year in EuroLeague. He only drew 2 against Maccabi because Maccabi just didn't let him do the things he does. He's got those really clever little moves to draw guys in, to draw the cheap foul. And Maccabi just didn't bite. They forced him out of his game. And that was very impressive to me. I suppose, Aris, just your own thoughts really on sort of that Maccabi performance, but also on what's going on at Barcelona. A 1-1 week for them, including a big win at home over Valencia. But also it appears Phil Pressey could be on his way out.
I have also read this report. I'm not disputing it, but we will have to wait and see, because it's obvious that Pressey is not performing on the level that someone would expect from him. However, the starting point guard of Barcelona should be considered Thomas Hertel. I believe that that was the case. That's why he was signed this summer. So Pressey, yes, he is not yet adapted to the European game, but I wouldn't expect from Barcelona to believe that Pressey will just come in Europe and be a difference maker. Even Shane Larkin last season needed some time in order to get accustomed to the way the game is played, and I'm using Larkin because he was ultimately one of the standouts of the season, even though Baskonia didn't do much damage in the playoffs. The truth is that while on paper Barcelona seems a team that is ready to contend for the Final Four, I believe that the initial Eurohoops power rankings, Barcelona was ranked somewhere at 6, and we got a lot of heat for this decision by many Barcelona fans who consider their team a lock for the Final Four. And in the end of the day, I think that what Barcelona is missing is time, and maybe a better definition of roles in the team, because you obviously have some clear ideas about Kevin Serafan and about Adam Hanga, but on the other hand, there are players like Sasha Vezenkov, let's say, who was one of the standouts of last season, and now you see him getting very few minutes. You see Ante Tomic coming from the bench and not being as valuable as you would expect. You see a guy like Petteri Koponen being not exactly lost, but not being the primary ball handler with Ertel and also Pressy getting to run the team when they are on the court. I believe that while Barcelona has a lot of good players in the roster, at this time maybe the problem is that the roles are not yet defined, and that's why you see players like Piero Oriola, let's say, being more valuable than expected. You see players like Moerman getting their chance to shine. You see that even the starting five of the team is something really fluid. I believe that this is the main problem of Barcelona, and if they get their roles and their minutes in some kind of order, then everything will become a lot simpler. I cannot find any other explanation for what is happening for Barcelona. That's why I'm assuming that this might be the issue. It's a case similar to Anadolu Efes, but it's even more peculiar because, especially because of what happened with Bros Bamberg. Barcelona was amazing at the start of the game. They were formidable, and suddenly they stopped playing. You can't really explain it anywhere else. We speak about that team that scored 38 points in 10 minutes and finished the game with 81 points. No matter how good of a defense Bros Bamberg used against them, what happened can't be explained only by the effort of Bamberg or by the lack of effort, if you want, from the side of Barcelona. It all boils down to chemistry, I'm afraid.
And Moshe, on the chemistry side of things, everyone asks about Real Madrid because of what Pablo Lasso said after that beatdown against Baskonia. Lasso came out and actually said, "I'm screwed." Now, the context obviously is critical here. He wasn't saying I'm screwed as in my job is in trouble. He was saying I'm screwed as in there was nothing I could do to beat Baskonia tonight. Then he comes out and just absolutely wrecks Unicaja. So that was quite the retaliation from Real.
First time, I would like to add on Aris's behalf on Barcelona. I believe what they've had in Bamberg was a mental meltdown. There is no other explanation. Now, this is perhaps the most worrying thing about what happened there, because what happened versus Valencia, we would obviously address later on when we will talk what happened to Valencia in this week. But regarding to Madrid, there's just a specific amount of times where you can poke the giant and hope, pray, wish, whatever, that he's not going to wake up. And Malaga got Madrid in the worst timing possible. I mean, besides the fact that we can also always say that, Malaga is not having, they're not getting Nedovic on back-to-back basis 100% healthy, because I do believe that before Žalgiris, it was a game-time decision for Malaga. But, long story short, to be honest, on this one, Madrid, they have some issues, obviously, with injuries. It's a damn shame, I gotta say. But it was bound to happen. Eventually Malaga are not. They have somewhat of a deep roster, but I don't think they have the talent quality to face Madrid, especially after they've been whooped by Baskonia and by Barcelona in the Super Clásico, the Liga Endesa, and the week before, and Maccabi. No one really expected Madrid to go 0-4 in the EuroLeague. Come on.
No one did. Just moving on to the game that's out this week, though, I think for most people, because it was the rematch, of course, of the championship game from 2016, the 2016 champions CSKA against 2017 champions Fenerbahce. Fenerbahce just came out and were wrecking fools in that first quarter. There's no other way to really put about it. And a bit into the second as well. Jan Vesely was tremendous, immense. And then by the time he got to the end of the second quarter, by half time, Cesca right back in, and like Fenerbahce had thrown away a huge lead for the most part. Cesca then go up end of the third. Real great resilience by Fener to fight back. Then we have a bit of a ding dong finish to normal regulation. Then we had overtime, which now Moshe and I disagree heavily on this. Like Moshe, I think you made clear you didn't like the way it ended. You wanted another overtime. That's fair. But I just have to shout out Savas Spiridal, a friend of ours on the show, because so he was like, I think it was Wanamaker or Melly. One of them had made a mistake, and Savas tweeted out, "We signed too many ex-Bamberg players." Then, of course, the game-winning play, a missed Brad Wanamaker shot, tipped in by Nick Melly with point 0.2 of a second, or maybe point 0.1. It wasn't entirely clear, but there was just a smidgen of time left as it hits his hand, leaves his hand back in for Fenerbahce to take the road win. Of course, Savas saw the humour in that it was a Bamberg connection for the winning play. But I think, you look at sort of the week Fener had, like two tough games against two sides who are expected to be in Final Four contention, I think it's safe to say. Lost at home to Olympiacos, won on the road at Sheshka. It's like that's a reasonable enough week, all things considered, for Fenerbahce.
Yes, and if one thing is to learn from this new EuroLeague format is that the days when the top teams lost in the EuroLeague until the playoffs at least 3 or 4 games are gone. You have to admit that you will lose some games, and in this season start, this is more obvious than ever. A 6-2 start, especially for CSKA Moscow, could be considered a red flag 5 years ago. At this point, it's only natural, and CSKA Moscow is on top of the standings, and that's why we shouldn't read too much into one game or one defeat. If we have a streak of bad games, of bad results, or at least bad performances, then you may look at it and get something out of it. At this point, defeat is acceptable. Let's put it this way. So, considering the fact that Fenerbahce Dogus played 2 overtimes against 2 Final Four contenders and got a road win despite losing at home, it's a pretty admirable feat, and it's what's really interesting is the fact that Fenerbahce was defeated at home and then reacted on the road against a team that almost never loses at home. This is admirable. It shows the mental toughness that a team like that any team which is a contender should have. And of course that goes also for CSKA Moscow. Yes, they had the chance to win the game. They couldn't, but they hung in there until the end, and that goes also for Olympiacos, who managed to beat Fenerbahce on the road.
And Moshe, obviously, your thoughts on that Fener Sheshka game?
Well, I agree on one thing with you. It's not like I didn't agree that was the ending. I just thought that, it deserved a winner shot, not like a fumble shot. That was like the thing that was like kind of in the way. But winning's winning, the bottom line, and that was a game. As of late, I've become more and more sensitive to the issue of fatigue and injuries, obviously, because we did had way too many injuries this season. So I was a bit worried about asking for a second overtime, to be honest. But, eventually, that win was not controversial as you described it when I said that Fener are going to win.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. And the team which surprised me, I think, for most people, the most surprising 2-0 of the week, despite who they were playing, I think it's fair to say, was Milano's 2-0. Going to Valencia, getting the high scoring win there, and then, of course, holding their home court against Bamberg. They had a great sort of mid game sort of run from Milano to sort of, put themselves on top as well. But crucially, because yes, a 3-5, which is better than most people would expect from them at this stage. Milan are still fun, and that's good because we need a team to be the league pass team of EuroLeague, and Milan remain that. Moshe, what do you reckon yourself with them?
You know what, Emmett? I don't know what to make of them. To be honest, it's sometimes they are showing great ability. Some things that you expected from them, but it's still not there. Because pretty much Bamberg lost the game more than Milan won it. I think so. That was way closer to be one win, one loss. But I do give them credit for getting both wins because mentally it helps and it gives you the confidence and it simple as they needed the wins. But they've brought Curtis Jarrell. Obviously, it helped them for the first couple of games. Questions are right now, number one, with them lacking a true floor general, and I'm saying an old school kind of guy, with them lacking the power of Andrew Godlock. Is it something that's going to help, that's going to hurt them dearly, short and long term? Because they are past, their games versus Fener, Madrid, and Cheska. But as we've said and as we've talked between us in our conversations, this year's EuroLeague is nothing like the one we had last year. I mean, it looks like it's closer to be a no holds bar competition where everyone goes at each other, everyone can get the win, everyone can lose. It's all hell breaks loose pretty much every week from the first tip off till the last one. So I guess just wait and see. But I'm still not that high on them right now. They need to be much more consistent and show. I mean, they are facing a great team, but first and foremost, they are going to face a team next week. Should they beat them? Yes, I would start looking differently at them.
And of course, a team which paid the price of the double round week, an 0-2 week for them, Zalgiris Kaunas. I suppose, Aris, a lot of that, like when you've got sort of, that issue roster and budget wise, these weeks are going to be a bit harder for you when you're a team like Zalgiris.
Yes, I'm totally in agreement with you. And sometimes the best player that a team can get in this new format of the EuroLeague is a private plane, or if this is too steep about many clubs, then some charter flights when they have to travel in a close location where it's really hard to find a commercial flight. And guess what? Kaunas doesn't have a lot of direct connections with other cities around Europe. So that's an obvious issue for coach Jaskevicius and his players. On the other hand, we may agree also on the fact that so far Zalgiris is overachieving. I'm not taking anything away from them. They are playing great. Players like Pangos and Misic and White are making a name for themselves. But in the long run, it will be interesting to see if they can keep up playing that way. And after getting an overtime win at Malaga, losing at home even by 20 points by the revamped, let's say, Baskonia, is nothing to be ashamed of, especially when you have such a start of the season. I still believe that the main weapon of this Zalgiris team is the fact that there is no real pressure on them. Being at this point at 4-4, it's already an achievement. And if they continue to have this kind of mentality and maybe reasonable expectations from themselves and from what they can achieve in the EuroLeague, they will certainly be a factor for the playoffs. But the question is if they can keep it up and be part of the playoffs. I still don't believe that they can be a lock at this point of the season for the playoffs, not by a long shot. Yes, they are playing good basketball. Yes, they are a real team, but at some point the lack of depth and the quality of the rosters will catch up with you.
And the newest entrants to finish off our section here this week to the four straight losses club, an area Moshe has been following quite intently. Valencia, Moshe, because I'm still high on them despite the run, but what does it say about the way these guys are performing?
We first got to look at all of these teams, like, Žalgiris and all the teams that we've expected them to fight, or at least be there till the last weeks. Look at the roster, look at the issues in terms of depth that they have, and that's why the teams that are crushing it or overachieving right now, you're going to see them kind of slowing down and gathering some losses probably when they're going to get to the final straight, just before the final, when they'll have to put the final push to get there, and I believe that's going to be missing. With Valencia, it looks like that whenever a team comes and puts Eric Green on their sides and they're moving in to get him, that pretty much destroys Valencia, because he's the one that's going to gather a whole lot of attention from the rivals' defense. Now, you saw that Barcelona pretty much hacked their entire offensive plan. I mean, the game versus Barcelona, they've let Valencia go all, they went pick and pop all over the road, right there at the Palau Blaugrana, which means it looks like they are lacking versatility. Not enough players can knock down shots, and eventually, when you're not an offensive weapon and you're not that good of a defender, you're becoming a liability. And I was not referring to a specific player by saying, you're not that good of a defender. I'm saying in general. Right now, you cannot play a game at home and, even in overtime, get over 100 points, I think it was, or close to that, and then going to Barcelona and also getting pretty much whooped, and then going back-to-back losses to Barcelona. I think that for now, teams have figured out Valencia, and they need to reinvent themselves in a way.
And on that note, we move on to the next section of the show. It's a couple of interesting things to look at this week. One's a bit of a mixed bag. The other is very much a great bag. It is time for the Scouts Notebook.
And now it's time for the Scouts Notebook, where we look back at key performances during the week in EuroLeague to see who stood out and why.
And we lead off with the news. Zoran Dragic, as Aris mentioned earlier, is leaving Milano off to Efes. I suppose, Moshe, Zoran and Milano didn't really work anyway, let's be honest. So, we'll see who works out in Efes, I suppose.
I don't think that's the best decision that they've made. If you're talking, they need another guard that can shoot, another forward. He can play the 2 and 3, mostly the 2 position. Is that really what Efes needs? I mean, they've got to score with McCollum. True that Lito is not that consistent. I would have expected him to bring another point guard, another floor general to try and, actually play half-court sets to a higher level of execution. I don't think that's what they need. Plus, the guy's after a horrible injury. You don't know what's the situation you're getting him, what shape he's in, what form. It's going to take him time to, get into business. Is that the best decision that they could have made? I don't know. And don't get me wrong, I like Zoran Dragic. Still, this time, not so sure about, what Efes can benefit from that specific situation. Aris, buddy, what do you think of it? I mean, do you agree that potentially not might have been the position they needed to reinforce?
I pretty much agree with you on the fact that if you say that there is something that can change the fate of Anadolu Efes, you wouldn't say that Zoran Dragic single-handedly will do that. There are the doubts that you described, and they are coming with him from Milan to Istanbul, and maybe what is really missing from Anadolu Efes is a classic floor general, and That's not what the game of Dragic is. On the other hand, I'm very fond of Coach Perasovic. He has a reputation of sometimes being grumpy. He has also a reputation of being highly demanding of his players. But I believe that he is also a coach that is kind of overlooked. He was a great shooter as a player and also kind of overlooked, and I believe that this is also following him during his coaching days. I want to see what will happen. I'm not rushing into any conclusion because, as we said before, what's obvious is that in general Anadolu Efes is underachieving, and they couldn't avoid this situation also last year when they had also a very admirable roster, and they also started strong the season, and then everything fall apart until they fought and got to the playoffs in the 11th hour. So what I'm completely positive about is that so far Anadolu Efes is not playing the way everyone should expect them to, and they are not performing the way that they should, and that has to change without a doubt.
I agree on Perasovic, by the way. I love what this coach is doing. I love this job in Baskonia. With Anadolu, also last year, losing in best of 5 series to Olympiacos is, remarkable because they fought. That was a series that, I wish, looking back, that I would have attended each and every one of these games. It's always fun looking at him. Emmett, we've seen a lot of players doing their thing. I think now it's time to go with the coaches, don't you think?
I think we got to mention one player doing his thing before we go, Moshe, and that is the numbers. Because the one thing we haven't mentioned is Nick Kalathis. How narrow, because we've been waiting like a decade for a trip dub in EuroLeague because they don't come along often. Nick Kalathis almost broke that streak last week, so we just got to give him a shout out here before we move on, because beyond the stats, there's not much to say here. 29 points, 10 assists, 9 rebounds. It has been a long time since someone came anywhere remotely that close to be literally one away in a category from causing a triple-double. They just don't happen in EuroLeague for multiple reasons. 42 PIR for those that care about PIR. I don't. And 7 fouls drawn, so congratulations to Nick on that as well. So great performance from Nick Kalathis. I don't think we need to go into much detail apart from saying he kicked ass against Efes. That was just tremendous individual performance. But like as Moshe was saying, now we're going to bring it on. We're going to move on to the coach's playbook.
The coach's playbook, where we look at the strategies that worked and that need to work in the coming weeks in EuroLeague.
That's better. So we got 3 coaches we're looking at here this week in the coach's playbook. Spahia, Martinez, Pascual. Interesting weeks for all of them. I suppose let's go in reverse order. Let's start off with Xavi Pascual. He had his 2-0 week after he's had an interesting run of late. Like obviously that Greek Cup loss a couple of weeks ago, still sticking in the craw, but he's been getting the important W's. For me, Xavi, he's really just shown like that sort of that attitude he's got when he's up against a wall, because he's been up against a wall a couple of times. I think it's fair to say. This season and last season with Panathinaikos, and he's been able to get it together. He's been able to just keep his head, find a way to stay employed just long enough before people lose their heads in Athens and fire the coach too quickly. Not saying that ever happens in basketball, lads, for goodness sake. But definitely quite impressed by him, in terms of how he's been able to keep things together, and also given just the nature of how past season's been, how the amount of shift around and stuff, that's been tough. But I suppose the person I really want to ask Aris about, Pedro Martinez, is he a miracle worker, or has he just got the right job at the right time?
First of all, Pedro Martinez has a wicked sense of humor, and I'm referring to the answer to the tweet of Tyrese Rice, who was asking if Valencia changed its coach a few weeks back, and Pedro Martinez answered himself with a simple yes. So this shows, first of all, a smart person. And simply put, if you see the turnaround at Baskonia, it's easy to understand why he's so smart. He took a player that was added as a safety net for the injured McCallum and for the injured, McRae, and made him one of the most valuable players of the team. I'm speaking about Matt Janning. I believe that he's a coach who is really pragmatical, and he's not about what he would expect from his players. He's evaluating every day what his player can do at this particular time, and he takes full advantage of it. Maybe that's the secret, let's say, or what's behind the turnaround in Baskonia, and what Martinez is bringing to the team. At least I believe that this is the best explanation I can provide for this whole situation.
And Moshe, obviously, we've got to turn to you. We're talking about Nevin. Basically, he's just getting things together in Maccabi. Like, are you seeing it like week in, week out? Like, is it looking as disciplined in the Israeli League and Cup games as well?
I mean, with Nevin, it's pretty simple. He came back to a place that he once knew. He came with the experience of, how to handle the pressured environment. And I gotta say, all of his players, they like him. Everyone's saying that he's a player's coach. And you see that, the imprint that he has on this team, and it is remarkable. I mean, nobody knows how will the story of the 2017-18 season will unfold. One thing is for sure, it's going to be interesting, and Maccabi are going to be a fun team to watch. We do see that everything that whenever they are making a mistake or something like that, then they fix it. They're working on it. It's you see the learning curve. You see the learning process that Maccabi has. Now, before we go on to the games of the week, guys, as of the 8th game day of the EuroLeague, only one team remains perfect at home, and that is Panathinaikos. Aris, the walls of Oaxaca have yet to be fallen.
Yeah, it's like the walls of Jericho or something. Well, traditionally Panathinaikos is playing much better at home, even in the post-Obradovic and post-Diamantidis era. That's a very well-known fact all around Europe. What's really interesting is that Coach Xavi Pascual is building a very interesting variation of last season's team. Practically what we have seen so far is last year's Panathinaikos, maybe a bit more mature and self-confident, with some players like Chris Singleton not playing yet on the level that they were expected to, but Singleton scored 35 points this Sunday, even in the Greek League. And you see players like Lukas Lekavicius or Marcus Denmon or even Ian Vougioukas, who are very well known about their abilities around Europe, but didn't have the chance to have a key role in the highest level yet. Vougioukas is the most experienced of the bunch, and he's happy with the role he has in Panathinaikos, but Denmon and Lekavicius are the players that can be the keys for Panathinaikos in order to make it to the next level. There's no doubt about what Kalathis can do, about what Singleton can do, about what Casey Rivers can do, about what James Gist can offer to the team after being so many years in Athens. The bets of Panathinaikos is having Kenny Gabriel being consistent, because he has demonstrated flashes of talent. He had some very good games, but in other games he's not the key contributor that everyone would expect him from be. Luckily for him, he had some great games against Olympiacos, and that always counts. You have a defensive specialist in the face of Thanas Antetokounmpo. You have an offensive specialist on the face of Nikos Papas, and you have Matt Lojeski, who, frankly, if he gets back his old self, will be a great asset. I see him as a potential sixth player of the team when he's fully capable to do so, coming from the bench and creating instant offense, let's say in the mold of what JC Carroll is doing at Real Madrid. And there is also Zach August, who has not yet been able to really contribute to Panathinaikos, but he has all the physical gifts to make a difference in the paint. I'm not really sure what will be the end result, because I have already mentioned 5 or 6 players that are kind of a bets. They are not proven quantities on the EuroLeague level. And I'm not sure that all the bets of Pascual will pay off in the end. But so far, especially at home, you see that Panathinaikos is so consistent that you really can't shake them. There is so much confidence in what they do on both ends of the floor that it's very hard for any team to make them lose their pace or their composure. There is the special case of the games against Olympiacos, but in general, very few teams are expected to go to Aka and think that they can get away with a win. I'm not so sure that Panathinaikos without Mike James and without Giannis Bourousis ultimately is a better team, and at this point I don't think that they really are. But if some of the new players can get the job done, then this may be the year that they will return to the Final Four.
And on that note, we're going to bring it along nicely to the last part of the show. It's time to look ahead to the games of the week.
The past is in the past. What's done is done. It's time to look forward. Here's our games of the week.
And we got a lot of games to get through, not a lot of time. So I'm just going to list off the games in their orders of the day, and we're going to go through it with the guys, just their takes on what games stand out to them and what they're looking forward to in those days. So we got on Thursday, we opened the proceedings. Zalgiris hosting Efes, Bamberg hosts Valencia, Milano hosts Olympiacos, Zvezda hosting Baskonia, and Barca against Maccabi. Moshe, going to you first. That 5-game slate, like what's jumping out to you really there?
All 5 of them, to be honest, simply because of the fact that we've learned that this year every game is amazing. So I'll start off by saying that. I mean, Emmett, you're getting Žalgiris Efes, and it's a great opportunity for Žalgiris to retaliate to Efes for pretty much preventing from them a playoff appearance. You have the game of the week pretty much with Maccabi and Barcelona, another historic clash, I think. I mean, it's very hard to pick one.
Okay, well, I'm going to go and say if I was a wrestling promoter or a boxing promoter and I was trying to put on a card for Thursday and I'm trying to build up interest and tension throughout the evening, I think the order of games on Thursday is just perfect because Zalgiris Efes, the stakes for both are a little bit different to each other in terms of where they're coming from, but interesting. Bamberg and Valencia, obviously both those in that like sort of trying to show who's the more relevant side. You got Milano suddenly got a bit of heat behind them, but Olympiacos obviously looking like a Final Four contender. Zvezda, Baskonia, if they're going to be a real team, you've got to be able to beat Zvezda, whether it's home or on the road. So we're going to see if that was just a quick run for them, if they're back. And then you're finishing off at Barca and Maccabi, just a great night. Like Aris, like Thursday evening's looking pretty good.
Yes, and because there is also the now infamous Shoot 16 jinx, I will keep it simple and speak about all of the games. In theory, you can say always that the home teams have the advantage, but that's not the case. That's why the games between Barcelona and Maccabi Tel Aviv, and most importantly, I believe the game between Panathinaikos and Real Madrid will be more than crucial and must-see games in every aspect. On the other hand, I believe, and I hope that I'm not wrong, that the only games in which the host will have less chances than the guest to get the win are the visit of Olympiacos at Milan and the visit of CSKA Moscow at Malaga. I'm not saying that Milan and Unicaja can't get the wins, but in theory, those are games that both CSKA Moscow and Olympiacos can get in the bag. So, what we have learned so far is that, first of all, predictions are cheap, and you can't really say what will happen. And no matter what the position in the standings is for any team, especially at this point of the season, there is no clear indication yet about their quality and most importantly about the condition of each team. The fact that they are coming from a double games week, and also in most cases the league games were played at least on Sunday, it means that everyone will be well rested, and they will have the time to reflect, maybe to practice a little bit, because it's a common secret at this point that the practicing methods have changed drastically in EuroLeague, because there's simply no much time in order to practice, and maybe someone will surprise us. But just speaking about the prestige of the classes, it's obvious that the games between Barcelona and Maccabi Tel Aviv, and also between Panathinaikos and Real Madrid, are must-see games and very difficult to predict.
And obviously, we'll go to most of our picks in a second, but also just giving you the Friday slate. Fenerbahce, Khimki, great start to the evening. Pau Real Madrid, which Aris obviously mentioned, obviously appointment view whenever that's on. And Unicaja Sheshka. I'm just going to give my picks before I go over to Moshe. I'm going mostly homers, but I'm going Oli, Baskonia, and Sheshka. Otherwise, I'm going home across the board. Moshe, how are you seeing Friday, and what are your picks?
First, I'll start with what I didn't do earlier, and that was the picks for Thursday. I'll go with, just to see Žalgiris win at home and finally, even though that might actually put the end to Efes' season, in my opinion. Bamberg over Valencia. Olympiacos, it's not a matter of can they or will they, it's a game they should win. Same goes for Baskonia. Maccabi given the time to prepare the best way possible, and the fact that Barcelona has yet to show stability. Game can go either way, but I would like to see Maccabi win here to see if they can do something better than just win two games in a row at a time. Now going to Friday, yes, Fener is simply because Khimki are still missing their 4 position, most of it anyway. And wow, Panathinaikos Madrid, guys, are you ready for a beatdown? Because this is going to be like a going the distance kind of a boxing bout, I think. I'll go with Panathinaikos simply because right now they are yet to be beaten at home, and I just might have jinxed them. Hope not, or maybe yes, I don't know. But still, I'm going with Panathinaikos and CSKA. Easy CSKA all the way.
So we're largely in agreement with our picks this week. Nothing terribly shocking for many of us. And on that note, it's really time for us to wrap it up, I'm afraid, because we've had a very long show this week. And frankly, I'm hungry, so I want to make my dinner. From Bowling Europe Towers, where I will soon not be as hungry, it's Emmett here saying goodbye. You can find me as ever, BIE_basketball on Twitter, bowlingeurope.com, and of course on our YouTube channel, which is YouTube/bowlingeurope. Aris, where can everybody find you?
You can find me as usual at Eurohoops.net and also at the social media and channels of Eurohoops, and you can also hear me commentating games at Cosmote TV.
And you can find me on teamscout.net, obviously the Facebook page Team Scout. I'm Team Scout on Twitter as well as at Moses B1. Guys, as always, subscribe, show the love, tune in, repost, reshare. Just, sharing is caring, so go with it. And, well, yes, till next time.